Hi, all. It's particularly exciting for me today. Uh, our subject is It All Boils Down to Self Respect. And the reason I'm excited is because of the fact that we're in the process, as many of you know, becoming AccuLife and leaving behind us AccuWeight Loss. The reason for the change is that everything that I have been working for these many years is beginning to come true. And I think the first thing I need to do for me today is to give you some history about me. As many of you know, I was born in the 1930s, just before World War II. They didn't know what people know today. And because of that, my life was severely impacted. Many of you have heard the terms attention deficit hyperactive disorder and dyslexia. In the late 1930s, they had no idea what that meant. And as I look back on it, don't know what to make of it in terms of its full impact upon me, but I want to share it with you because it leads us to where, from my point of view, we are going. I was the dummy of the class. I couldn't sit still, and I couldn't read. Teachers had no choice. They had to accept me. But I was and let me say it, I was the dummy of the class. And I want to share with you an interesting story. I was in fifth grade. My teacher was out for the day and left a note for the substitute teacher that said, "Don't call on Schwartz. If there are any questions, you'll speak to me tomorrow." Anyway, the class went on. There was a reading period. I raised my hand, and the teacher called on me, and I read. Simple as that. The following day, my teacher came in, saw a note from the substitute teacher. It said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I asked Schwartz to read, and he read." The teacher called me up, opened a book, and said, "Read for me." And I read. And from that moment on, what happened is indelibly imprinted in my brain. She called up one of the girls. Her name was Martha, gave her a clipboard and said, "I'm taking Schwartz with me to the principal's office. If any student speaks up, put his name down and they'll answer to me. And in those days, you could do that. And I followed the teacher down to the principal's office. I'll never forget sitting outside the principal's office on this dark, I call it mahogany bench with slats in the back. The teacher went into the principal's office, glazed glass so that you couldn't see through, and I could hear voices. And I could hear voices. A few minutes later, the teacher came out, 4 or 5 minutes later, and said, "Wait here," and left with me sitting outside the principal's office. I don't know how much time transpired, but it was at least an hour and a half, when my parents showed up. I looked, and my mother said to me, "It never ends with you, does it? Every Monday and Thursday there is something. And here we are again." And she knocked, and both she and my father went into the principal's office while I sat outside. And I could hear voices. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I hear voices. 10, 15 minutes passed. My parents came out. My mother looked at me and said, "It never ends." And my father went, "Follow me." Out we went, got into my father's car, and my father turned around and said to me, "You've been suspended from school." And my mother chimed in and said, "The teacher said you are," and I'll never forget the word, "the most insidious child she has ever met. You're going to grow up to be like Al Capone." Now, can you imagine being in 5th grade, suspended from school, told that you're going to be like one of the biggest criminals there were, and I needed to see a psychiatrist before I could be returned to school? Well, my parents took me to a psychiatrist. I went for 5 sessions. On the 5th session at the end, he called in my mother and father and sat them down and said, "I have no real understanding of what is going on, but your son is not lying. Whatever it is that happened, he could not read. He can now read, and I'm writing you a note to have the school take him back." Not the end of the story. The school had to take me back. But in those days, things were different. Now, I don't know if many of you know, but in all public buildings, doors open outward so that you can get locked out, but you cannot get locked in. What they decided to do with me, because they had no choice, they had to take me back, they took my desk out into the hall, and as you know, doors open outward. They put me behind the door in the hall so that I could look at into the classroom through the space in the door, and I had to sit there for the rest of the school year with kids running up and down the hall, making fun of me. And that's how it lasted for that period of time. Now, Why do I tell you this story? We're talking here about two things that I see are critically important for our transition from AccuWeight to AccuLife, because weighing less is a mental game. If you're a drug addict, I can take drugs out of your life. If you're an alcoholic, I can take alcohol out of your life. I cannot take food out of your life. And here we are, all of us, with the same basic underpinning. We're interested in what we weigh, and we're doing the program because we wish to weigh less. Now, going back, self-respect, self-esteem are critical issues. And I want to talk about them because from a personal point of view, I'm excited that we've now moved to the point because we know the program works. That is not our issue at all. I need for me to make you successful. The program works. That's not the question. Doing the program and any program like this and other things in life are important. And it all boils down to self-respect and self-esteem. Simple example. I'm the dummy, right? But I was a left-handed pitcher. And I had a curveball that was phenomenal. And so the guys always wanted me on their team because you couldn't hit me, and therefore my left arm got me through. They ignored the fact that I was this problem child. And in those days, we didn't have the kinds of things that we have now. And from that day on, my life was changed. Now, think about this. I have all of these degrees, including a doctor's degree. And I was an attention deficit hyperactive disorder youngster with dyslexia. And I overcame it. And that's where I want you to look. The key to success, remember what I said, self-respect, self-reliance. And the differences are very real. One other example, and we'll go a little bit further. For 50 plus years, I was a licensed psychologist in the state of New Jersey. In fact, I smile about it. I had a license under number 500. So I was one of the first 500 psychologists licensed in the state of New Jersey. For 50 years, I saw people. And somewhere towards the end of that, I weighed almost 300 pounds. And every day, Sorry. I forgot to shut off my cell phone. I'm going to do that now. Every day, people would come to see me, and I would guide and help them because I was a licensed psychologist. And here I was now, almost 300 pounds. And that's where I met Dr. Chu. He took me to UMDNJ as his assistant, trained me doing this study on the hypothalamus. And I would call him Joseph, and he would call me Dr. Schwartz. I was 30 years his senior. He was a professor at UMDNJ, chief of pain and rehabilitation medicine, a genius. And he would call me Dr. Schwartz. Now, why am I telling you this? When it was time, he said to me, Dr. Schwartz, you won't look at it, but you've burned out. Psychology is no longer your forte. Look at you. You're almost 300 pounds, and I think you should go into the weight loss business, and I want to help you. I looked at him, and he went further. He said, we're going to open an office for you in my office, but you're not going to be able to do that until you lose weight. You cannot be an overweight doctor. It's hypocritical. I went on the program. I hated it. I hated every single minute of it. But in 3 months, I lost 84 pounds. And the reason I tell you is because I had no idea that I was hiding behind putting things in my mouth. Dr. Chu was someone who was brilliant, taught me, and now I'm sharing with you. So let's focus now on where we need to go. We have 2 things. We have the program. There's not one of you out there who can show me anyone who's ever done the program who didn't have a physiological issue, who did not lose what we promise. So the program works. So let's not talk about the program. Let's talk about where we have to go if we're going to be successful. And so I took the liberty of going and giving a description so that we all know what it is that we're talking about. The difference between self-respect and self-esteem. Self-respect is personal. And one of the things that I hear constantly, a woman called me this morning and said, Dr. Schwartz, I want to apologize. I haven't spoken to you for 3 months. And I said, oh, and what are you apologizing for? Well, I didn't call you, tell you what was going on, and I want to restart the program. And I stopped her. What she did, she had the right to do. I'm not part of her social life, her social group. She was coming to Accuwait as a patient. I did not know it, but situations and circumstances medically within her family had arisen, and she stopped coming. It's an adult decision. She had the right to do that. What was she apologizing for? And I pointed out to her that she had the right to make that decision. What did she do that was wrong? Well, in essence, what she was saying is, underlying it all, there was a perception that there was some need on her part, as though I were a family member, for example, to let me know. So point number one, stop justifying your adult behavior. You have a right to choose what you wish to choose. You don't have to apologize for it, because if you have to justify everything that you do, where is the self? And you've heard me say this before. How can you be selfish if you do not have a self? Why is it in the airplane, when the mask comes down, they tell you put yours on first? Because if you can't take care of you, you can't take care of anyone else. So let's take a look, because here's where I want to go. Because if we get there, not only will we have a greater understanding, but this is what's important. The basic tenets of self-respect and self-esteem, carry it out throughout your life on every level. If you are clear about where we're going, not only will you be able in the future to keep yourself where you want to be, but I promise you, based upon, let's say, my experience, that it's going to change your life for the better. What is self-respect? I'm putting on my glasses because I want to read. Self-respect can be defined as the regard a person has for himself. Some believe this is a form of acceptance of self. Having self-respect is very important. If a person has no self-respect, he can be bullied, ridiculed, tormented. Such a person may find it difficult to get along in society because he can become a victim quite easily. Having self-respect does not denote that the individual is becoming pompous or arrogant. On the other hand, it highlights that the individual has standards and principles by which he lives. Self-respect is not something that applies only to a class of people, irrespective of the class, caste, religion, color. Everyone has self-respect. Psychologists believe that the child should be taught to develop their self-respect more than self-esteem because it sets a strong foundation for self. Now, what's very interesting is how this fits in with everything, as I say, boiling down to self-respect. Here's what we need to understand. Example, and I've written down some names so that I can share with you. Here is a woman doing the program, and she is an accountant. She started the program 3 weeks ago. And here's the interesting thing. She called me on the phone, and I said to her, this is accounting season, and you've been giving me all of these excuses for not sticking with the program. We discussed it. I asked her to get the Tic Tacs or the Dr. John's lollipops, and we discussed the Qigong breathing. I got a call from her this morning. She's finished 3 weeks on the program, and she had promised me that she would do the Qigong breathing and that she would use either the Dr. John's or the Tic Tacs. Here's the beautiful thing. She's lost in 3 weeks almost 15 pounds. And when she spoke to me on the phone, she said to me, Dr. Schwartz, I don't believe the change. And I said, what is the change? In order for me to do the beads, in order for me to do the breathing, now this is tax season. People have demands on me constantly, and I'm constantly doing other people's work. When I started this with you and you set out these parameters, I take out time every 2 hours. I do my beads, I do the breathing, and I use the lollipops. I've lost weight. My work has not suffered. But I went to a wedding over the weekend. I put on a vest that I hadn't been able to wear. I was able to, it was tight, but I was able to button those up. I cannot tell you how good I feel. What changed? She took out time for herself. She became important in her own life. You are the most important person in your life. Everything about it has to do with you. And one of the biggest issues all weight programs have is what I said before. You have no choice. Food is going to remain in your life, and how you use it and where you use it and how you deal has to do with your importance in your own life. The roller coasters. By the way, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Over 80% of people who go on programs, over 80% gain all of the weight back within 3 years. Why play that game? Why not do what I have learned over all of these years, being both a psychologist and now doing weight loss? Let's take this experience and let's make ourselves important and begin to recognize, and this is what the important thing is. Most of the people that I talk to are silent. They suffer because they are silent. And why are they silent? They're silent because their experience in life caused them to define who they are. If you're not important to you, then how much value do you have? Self-importance requires that you have a self. Here's a good one. Guy is head of a non-profit. He's been on and off the program, I don't know how many times. And when we shifted to AccuLife, I sat him down and I said to him, let's get serious. You have, over the years, made constant excuses for eating, for drinking, for not doing the beads. And yet, here you are, an exceptionally successful executive in a corporation. How is it possible for this to be? And the answer is, we could put you in therapy for 5 years, 4 years, 6 years. And in those 4, 5, 6 years, we begin to understand why you behave in the way in which you do. I propose, and I have all the respect for therapy. What simply happened to me is that I burned out. And let's be very clear about this. My job as a therapist, you have all of the answers. I have none of the answers. I have lots of questions, but I have none of the answers. Everything that you know and need to know is already embedded in you. And my job as a therapist was to help guide you to recognize what it was all about so that you figured out your own answers. And that's what AccuLife is going to be about, and why I want you to be focused on what we are talking about here today. If we start talking about the program, nothing changes. But if we begin to recognize that we are treating ourselves with self-respect, and we'll talk about self-esteem as well. Self-esteem, by the way, in my mind, and we'll get there, has to do with ability. Let's face it, some people have greater ability than others in different ways. It's important. But self-respect is the bottom line. Now, I sat him down and I said, help me understand what it is. And he listed for me donors to the nonprofit, board of directors to the nonprofit, meetings that he had to attend, luncheons that he had to go to. And the list was incredible. And then I asked him, what about you? And he said, I'm overweight and your program works, so that's why I'm here. I said, well, if it's working so well, when did you start with me? And he said, 2010. So he's been doing this program for 12 years. And every single time he's done the program, he's lost the weight. Sometimes it's lasted longer than we would expect because of the reasons that I just gave you. But he's been on the program for 12 years. The shift to AccuLife puts you in the middle. As you learn to take care of yourself, but add the other piece, and this is what I see. This is what the consultation is all about. This is what the verbalization is all about. Every program, every, quote, diet program out there, if done properly, works. Why are we different? We're different because we are a non-caloric, natural program that uses acupressure and a strict food program. Simple. You do it. It works. Doing it is the important thing. And the reason people get hung up is because what's going on between us right now is looking at ourselves and saying, how do we establish a process? And this is what becomes important. How do we establish a process that allows us to be important in our own lives and recognize? I wrote this down. My family is an interesting one, and I love it. That's why I wrote it down. My family wants to take me out for Mother's Day. I've been doing really well on the program, and I'm afraid that they will sabotage my success. And on top of everything else, Doctor, it's a milk day. I'd appreciate your advice on what to do. Now, we're talking about self-respect, and we're talking about Mother's Day, and we're talking about a person who's doing well on the program, and boom, it's Mother's Day. Now, the person happens to be a female, so they'll be celebrating Mother's Day, and she's the mother. Isn't that wonderful? Here's the mother worrying about everybody else and wanting to satisfy them. And it's a milk day. Hi, Val. Now, listen to me. This is what's important. What is it? And this is what the question was when I spoke with her. What is going on? The answer is, I'm the mother and I have to make everybody else happy. I said, why do you have to make? Well, they're celebrating my day. They're celebrating your day and they want you to eat. And you're telling me it's a problem because it's a milk day. Now, what's going on? What is the process? What is it that you need to do to have Mother's Day and feel good about it, since it is Mother's Day? Well, first of all, it's a milk day. I said, okay, it's a milk day. What do you want to do? She said, well, I want to go out with my family and I want to feel good. And it's a milk day. I said, okay. Why not make it a fruit vegetable day? And she said to me, can I do it? Now, hear the question? She needed permission to do it. Do you need permission? You're the adult. The more you understand of your importance in your own life. I told you the airplane people know what they're talking about. Put on your mask first so that you can work with other people. Or how about, I don't respect myself. If I don't respect myself, can you trust that I'm going to respect you? If I respect me, I have no choice but to treat you with respect, because how can I respect myself if I watch myself not respecting you? Everything changes. Our success is dependent upon the fact that we are the center of our own lives. And there is nothing wrong with that. How we establish these processes over our lifetime is irrelevant. If you really want to understand, and I can appreciate that totally, then go into therapy and you'll have a greater understanding of what it's all about, but it doesn't change the bottom line. If you are the center of your own world, then you have a self. And if you're taking care of that self, it impacts on your entire life. The problem is silence. That's what these sessions are all about, and why I ask you over and over again to ask me questions, to talk to me during consultations. I'm not going to do therapy. You have all the answers. I'm going to help you deal with it. And that's, for example, what the Magic Protocol was all about. Why go through this whole process of vacillation? Should I eat with them? Shouldn't I eat with them? What am I going to tell them? How am I going to tell them? What advice did I give her for Mother's Day? Number one, I told her to make it a vegetable day. I said, would that make it easier? She said, yes. I said, tell me, what's the big problem? She said, well, I would like to do this and I would like to do this. I stopped and said, hold it. How do you see Mother's Day? And she said, people are celebrating the fact that I am the mother and all the things that I've done over their lifetimes, my husband and my relationship with him, and they're honoring me. I said, they're honoring you, and you're what? How are you going to possibly enjoy yourself? And do you feel honored? Now, let me ask you a question. And here we go. And I'm asking you as well. It's Mother's Day. You going to gain 5 pounds, 10 pounds? What are you talking about? I'm asking you. Do whatever you do. How many pounds are you going to gain? And the answer didn't come. I said, I don't care what you do. Nothing you're going to do is going to be terrible. But let's make Mother's Day important. What do you want to get out of it? I want to finish the day feeling really good about it. Wow. Already you're not having it because of your behavior. So what did I tell her? I said, make Mother's Day, and this is just one possible resolution, make Mother's Day a 1 meal a day day. Decide what it is you're going to do and make it number one. Instead of a dairy day, make it a vegetable day. Now, you're going out to dinner with your family. So we have dinner and we have the rest of the day. Now, let's separate out the rest of the day and the family gathering. How long is the family gathering going to last? She said 2-3 hours. And what is the family doing? They made reservations. We're going to this restaurant. They're taking me out. I said, excuse me, they're taking you out? Yes, they're paying for it. Wow, what a present. They're paying you to what? Do what they want you to do? Okay, how do we deal with it? You know the restaurant. Okay, first thing first. 1 meal. Salad, vegetables. You want a beverage? Okay, salad. You want a dessert? Okay. Let's forget about the interaction and the conversation. Now you know what it is that you want. It's a restaurant. First thing is a salad, right? Call over the server and ask the server whether or not they can make you a salad. And since it's what you want, have them make the salad with a little less this or that, but now you have a salad. And have a protein, have a dessert, don't overindulge, and 3 hours have gone by. What about the rest of the day? It's very simple. And she told me they're going out about 4 o'clock. So I said, at 12 o'clock, because you're used to not having breakfast, at 12 o'clock, have a Granny Smith apple. Have 2 Granny Smith apples. Or, it's a special day, have a Granny Smith apple, go out and have your Mother's Day, and save a Granny Smith apple for the evening, and restart again on Monday with a dairy day. She said, I can do that. And that sounds pretty easy because you put yourself first. There's no discussion that's necessary. You have to take care of you because you're the most important person in your life. You don't need to discuss it with other people. You don't need permission. You've decided what you want to do. Now, if you've decided what you want to do, why don't you do it? Next story. And I've got a million of them because it happens all of the time. Sorry. I wrote some things down so that I would remember. As most of you know, I'm the most organized person that you've met. I'm feeling starving most afternoons. Does that mean my beads are not working? Now, let's again understand. The dynamics here are different than any other place. This is not a metabolic program. Your body is talking. She says, I feel starving. From the beginning, we recognize that we can live for a long period of time without food. We cannot live for a long period of time without water. If she is starving in the afternoon, it means she is one of two things, or both, dehydrated and low in electrolytes. What should she do? One, she should drink. People want food because the body is saying, I'm thirsty, and if you eat food, you're going to get the liquid that's in the food. Take away the food, add water, electrolytes as a possibility, and the problem goes away. But she wasn't listening to herself. There's that self-respect kind of thing. My multivitamin has apple cider vinegar in it. Can I still use it? And her multivitamin also happens to be in pill form. Again, listen. How much apple cider vinegar can be found in her multivitamin? Particularly, it's in pill form. Answer: Dr. Chu used to say to me all the time, one robin does not a summer make. Pay attention to your body talking to you. You have all of the answers. Your life experience is there to teach you not to repeat the mistakes that you made before, because you don't need to make those mistakes again if you're paying attention to you. And what happens is it carries over into other areas, because when you feel good about you and you're working with other people, they sense this feeling of self-respect. There's a power in that. that radiates outward. People love it because they want it, and you have it. The key here is, and we have to go further with this, you can't do it in silence, because you can't know what you don't know. One of the important things that I've told you in the past that I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is they have a sponsor. And the sponsor is interacting with them, and they grow and they learn together. But they're verbalizing. They're not alone in all this. And when you like you, your entire life begins to change, and it carries over into every other place. I want to go further with this. I need questions as to how to grow this interaction so that we can share our experiences, and not only that, but have the success by now becoming AccuLife with you in the center. And that's the key. You are the most important person in your life. If you are not the most important person in your life, what message are you sending? All of us have to be the center. All of us don't have the same abilities. Some have greater abilities, some not. We'll talk about that. That's where the self-esteem comes in. Please use email, use telephone, use your consultations. Let's interact. Let's grow this so that we not only lose the weight, we keep it off, and we create an environment which is so much more exciting to live in. Hi, Australia. I'll see you again soon. I hope this has been helpful, and I'm going to go forward with it and bring along with me any and all of you that want to participate. Thanks for being here.